Hello, my lovely anatomists and physiologists, Michele Glass here. And we're still looking at chapter 10. We spent a little bit of time last time sort of talking about factors that influence muscle tension. So we talked about recruitment. So we said if you increase recruitment, you increase the amount of tension that can be produced in that muscle. So we see this as a direct relationship. Arrows are both pointing in the same direction. Remember here, recruitment is talking about the total number of motor units or muscle fibers that are contracting. We also talked about sarcomere length. So we said that the ideal length is going to give us the best tension, is how I'm going to phrase it here. So we saw if you overstretch the muscle and you eliminate your zone of overlap, you're not going to be able to do cross bridge formation. But also if the muscle is already really shortened, you basically, I said, you've jammed up all of those filaments, and so you don't have anywhere else to kind of pull that actin. And so the third piece that we're looking at is what's called frequency. And this is the whole topic for this video. Frequency here is talking about the neuronal response. So we're talking about the neuron firing at a rapid pace or at a very slow pace. Okay, so frequency, we're talking about the neuron firing. What we're going to see is as you increase the frequency of neuron firing, I'm going to put here increase the frequency of the neuron signal, you're going to increase the amount of tension that you can build in that particular muscle. So here again, we see another example of a direct relationship, meaning that both arrows are pointing in the same direction. So let's talk a little bit more about what we mean by frequency of stimulation. So frequency of stimulation, again, is talking about how rapid the motor neuron is, let's say, generating and propagating the action potential. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about how frequently is that neuron actually releasing acetylcholine. Acetylcholine, remember, directly couples, the excitation is directly coupled to the contraction. So if we have a signal being sent from the neuron, then we're going to see calcium being released and we're going to see muscle contraction. So if that neuron is continuing to fire, we'll see that ultimately that calcium may just stay flooded in the sarcoplasm all the time. If calcium is flooded in the sarcoplasm, remember, is the cytoplasm of the muscle cell. If calcium is always flooded in the sarcoplasm, then you constantly get troponin, tropomyosin complex shifted off of the actin myosin binding site. And so that means you're constantly allowing cross bridge formation to occur. This is what we're talking about here. Okay, so the twitch is talking about one action potential. So this means one cross bridge cycle. Cross bridge cycle, remember, is the binding of the myosin to the actin, the myosin releasing that stored energy and pivoting. We call that the power stroke, pulling the actin towards the M line, and then the detachment. This single twitch can occur for a few to 100 milliseconds. And this depends on the type of muscle fiber that we're looking at or the muscle cell that we're looking at. So you can feel a muscle twitch, but you're not producing any real work. So you can feel a muscle twitch, but you're not really producing a movement. This isn't something that's a sustained, tension is built in the muscle and now you can have productive work. We're not getting that with the twitch. With the twitch, you have 3 phases. So we have what's called the latent phase. We have what's called the contraction phase. And we have what's called the relaxation phase. And these 3 phases are occurring over like 2 milliseconds or maybe 100 milliseconds, depending on the type of muscle fiber. The latent phase is when the action potential is being propagated and the calcium is released from the SR. SR, remember, means sarcoplasmic reticulum. So the latent phase is, okay, acetylcholine has diffused across the membrane. It's bound to the chemically gated sodium channels. Sodium has initially flooded the cell. That triggers the opening of the voltage gated sodium channels. Now we have our action potential in the muscle. That would be the beginning of the latent phase. That action potential, remember, has to then go across the outside of the muscle fiber and then down into the cell through those T tubules, hitting the triad, triggering the release of calcium ion. So clearly there's a little bit of like period between the stimulation of the muscle fiber and then actually seeing contraction. And this little tiny period of time is the latent phase. And this may be half of a millisecond. So we're talking extremely short time frame. The contraction phase consists of the cross bridge formation, and the power stroke. Cross bridge formation, again, is the connection of when the myosin grabs hold of the actin. The power stroke is when the myosin releases the stored energy, pivots, and pulls the actin toward the M line. And then the relaxation phase is actually when the contraction stops. So that means there's no more new cross bridge formation or power stroke. The calcium ion gets pumped back into the SR. So now we're seeing, the cross bridge detachment. We're seeing calcium leaving the sarcoplasm, going back into the SR. So that's allowing the troponin trypomyosin complex to move back over top of the actin. And this is when the muscle returns to resting. I'm going to say muscle at rest because I feel like I have room to write that. We can show our twitch in a graph. So you can draw your Y and your x-axis. Your x-axis, you can put time, and your y-axis, you can put tension. And so what we can see happening is we can start out at our latent phase with no tension being built. So we're kind of like level with our x-axis. And then we can draw kind of like a bell curve. So we can come up top of the contraction phase and then head back down for the relaxation phase. So you start out at 0 tension, then you gradually build your tension, and then you gradually bring your tension down till you're back to 0. That's your twitch. What we can see happening, if we need a more sustained contraction, we'll see that the nervous system will actually increase the frequency of stimulation. And so we can get what's called a graded muscle response. And this is where the nervous system can actually signal to get various amounts of force from that muscle. So again, that's that idea of like, it's only going to take just a tiny bit of force for me to bring my hand up to scratch my nose. It's going to take significantly more force for me to pick up this kitchen table, kind of idea. With the wave summation, what we see is the signaling of the nervous system begins to add up. So summation, sum, addition is this idea. So what we get is the additional stimulus triggers release of that calcium ion. And so all of this calcium ion then is available to activate additional sarcomeres. While the muscle is still contracting. So basically this additional signaling releases more calcium, so you're bringing more sarcomeres online. The more sarcomeres you have online, the more tension you can build in that muscle, the more power. So with the wave summation, we have basically two different examples here. We have what's called incomplete tetanus, and then complete. And I'm going to change my color with complete tetanus so I can have two colors to show, because I want to draw a graph here and put them together on the same graph. So let's look first at the incomplete tetanus. In the case of the incomplete tetanus, you get a quick cycle of contraction. And you get a short relaxation phase. Whereas in complete tetanus, you get a higher frequency of stimulation. This causes the relaxation phase to disappear. This causes you to have continuous contractions. And this allows you to get to your peak level of tension, your highest tension. So let's draw another graph. So we're going to have, again, our x is going to be time, and our y-axis will be tension. And let's start by drawing our incomplete tetanus first. So you're going to start drawing like you did with your twitch. Start at 0 tension, make a small little increase, come down like for relaxation, and then bring it back up and go a little bit higher, bring down for relaxation, come back up, go a little bit higher, down for relaxation, bring it back up a little bit higher, down for relaxation, and then let's end that stimulus there. In the case of the complete tetanus, we're going to start at our 0 tension, and then we're going to build, sort of plateau out, and then come down. And with our complete tetanus, we're able to achieve more tension. We're able to get to that highest peak level of tension, and we're holding and sustaining that. So there's no drops, there's no relaxation phases. We also have what's described as Trapeze, and this is a German word for staircase. And this is occurring when your muscle has been dormant for an extended period. I don't actually know how long that extended period has to be. I don't know if it's like, hey, I've been sitting here for 2 hours watching these chapter 10 YouTube videos, and now my legs are fully asleep. seems like that could be an extended period. Could be waking up first thing in the morning. You haven't been using your muscle a whole lot. And so in this case, the tension is described as increasing in a stepwise fashion. And I'm using the word stepwise here because this is number one, what the graph looks like, and number two, this is how we get this term trapeze. So let's draw our last graph here. So again, let's put time on the x-axis and tension on the y-axis. And here, this will look a little bit like our incomplete tetanus, but we'll pick up the key difference. So start at 0 tension and then do your increased tension and come all the way down to your 0 line. And then come back up with tension a little bit higher and come all the way down to your 0 line. And then go up a little bit higher, come all the way down to your 0 line. And let's do one more kind of step a little bit higher and then let's zero it out. So in the case of the trapeze, you do a full relaxation. You don't just do like a partial relaxation phase. All right, stay tuned for the next one. And as always, take care of yourselves and each other.